Okay, so hopefully you've learned a little bit about the three key programming constructs and how to go at this activity. So what we're going to do now is just going to go through it. So we've got three programming constructs: sequence, selection and iteration, and we've got three possible answers here. So let's have a look. So this is when a program will change its path based on a condition. Well, that answer is selection, because an if statement, it says if this, do this, otherwise do something else. So it changes what it does depending on what that condition is. Okay, so if traffic lights equal red, we stop. If they're not, we go. Next we've got this is when program repeats code. This can happen for a set number of times or while until a condition is met. So repetition is known as iteration in programming. You iterate, you repeat, and then that means that sequencing is when any set of instructions are carried out in order first to last. Okay. So the next part of the task is you've got three different algorithms. You need to identify what programming constructs are used and what lines you can see that on. So let's start with this first algorithm. So as soon as you see an if statement in a program like we've got here, your first answer should always be selection. So we've got selection. And what lines have we got that on? Well, we've got it on lines 2 and lines 4. Now, the other thing to be wary of is almost every program will have sequencing, because sequencing is just doing something in order. So you could say here from going from line 1 to line 2 is sequencing. So I'm also going to write sequencing. However, I think the key thing to note here is if it was an exam question, you got asked to identify one programming construct, then I would always pick selection in this case, because that's clearly what the exam board are looking for. Now if it got asked for name two different programming constructs, then you would also pick out sequencing. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So next one then, we've got an algorithm here. We've got number of words, number of chapters, blah 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 blah. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code. First of all, I can't see an if statement, so I know there's no selection there, so I can immediately rule that out. With iteration, there's a specific way you can spot this as well. So iteration, you're looking for a for loop, an until loop, or a while loop, and that's not apparent in there either. So we can rule out iteration. So that means we've got sequencing, because it's doing each line in order, one after another. Okay, and where have we got that? Well, it's throughout, isn't it? Okay. And then finally then, we've got this algorithm. What programming constructs are used and what lines can you see them? Well, I'm going to highlight some keywords here. The word for and the word if. So straight away, as I just said on the first example, that if we've got an if statement, we've got selection. Okay, and that is on line 1, 2, 3, line 4. Okay, we've also got a for loop. So when we've got a for loop, that means we've got iteration, because it's going to repeat something. And that's on line 2. And you could argue that it's also got sequencing. It goes from line 1 to then line 2. It goes from line 3 to then line 4. So it's doing things in sequence. Okay, but as I said before, chances are in an exam question you might get asked for, given an algorithm like this, get asked for 2 programming constructs, in which case they're looking for iteration and selection being identified. Okay, so key things here is iteration. To identify iteration, you're looking for for, while, or until. Okay, for a selection, you're looking for an if statement, and sequencing is just when it does stuff in order.